you so much for being here today. It's a privilege to welcome you to the third consecutive state budget update and analysis with our state legislators. I'm going to invite this morning our venue host, Mayor Harold Gordon, to come and join us for a brief welcome, our Pledge of Allegiance, and Councilman Dave Nutty will join him for our opening prayer before we serve lunch. Mayor?
Thank you. Thank you for everyone coming. It's good to honor this and listen to our legislators, what they've done in the State House. So I just want to welcome everyone, and especially like I said, our special guest. And I'll go ahead and lead the Pledge of Allegiance. Everybody would please stand. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Now we'll have Dave do our invocation for our dinner.
Please remain standing as we give reverence to God. Our Heavenly Father, we thank you that on this day of recognition of National Day of Prayer, that you give us this opportunity to come to you freely. We thank you for that. We thank you that you give us a nation that we can pledge the flag to, and our support in this Constitution and all the laws that we have provided. We ask, Lord, that you give strength, decision-making, wisdom to those who serve us in the positions of decision-making. We just know that it's a difficult thing sometimes, just as the mayor and I would sometimes have a tough time just doing the right thing, knowing that right thing by your word is the right thing. Thank you for the food that's been provided. May it bless our bodies. Thank you for those who came. They have safety in travel on the way home. We pray to you in the name of your Son, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Welcome. Senator Jean Lysing, thank you so much. And then you can just pass that on. Thank you.
Well, I didn't want Senator Rotz and Representative Zemke to fight over who's first, so here I am, right? It's been an interesting session at the General Assembly. We sine-died, quit, finished, whatever you want to call it, last Wednesday night about 11 o'clock maybe. It was actually a few days earlier than what we had to by law. By law, we had finished by April 29th. So there was a few days to spare in there. The biggest job that we had to do in the long session, which went from the first week in January until the end of April, was a 2-year budget, okay? So I have some handouts on the table, and probably more than you really wanted, but it gives you an idea of you know, where is your money going? How is the state spending your tax dollars? And I think you have a right to know that. We all probably think we pay too many taxes. And so this gives you an idea. 50% of it goes this year to K-12 education for this next 2-year budget. 12% goes to higher education, so those would be like our state universities. So if you have a kiddo or a grandkid that's going off to Purdue or IU or whatever, know that their tuition is probably a little less than it would be if the state wasn't helping fund those institutions. 15% now goes to Medicaid, and Medicaid is the health insurance for the poor. And I always want to explain to people, we think of automatically those people that just are young and not working, but the truth is, if you look at that Medicaid pie, 1/3 of the people that are receiving Medicaid are actually what I call our super seniors, people that have long outlived their retirement funds and whatever, and maybe now they're in a long-term care facility. The 1/3 of the population, they become Medicaid eligible at some point, and they are actually consuming 2/3 of the money in that Medicaid pot, okay? Now, the other 2/3 of the people that are on Medicaid are people of lower income, but their costs are a lot less, so they're only consuming about 1/3 of the total dollars. When you look at the rest of the pie, there isn't a lot left, okay? I mean, you can see that there's more than ever going to the Department of Child Services. And some people would say, wow, why is that? Well, unfortunately, there's been a lot of problems in a lot of people's homes. A lot of it has to do with drug addiction, and you guys here in this community know well about that. And so what happens then is there are kids that are placed with the state. And this past year, just to give you an idea, and this would be when I say past year, this was the most recent data that we could get as legislators. There were 59 kids in our state that died of abuse and neglect. And that just seems totally terrible to me, in our civilized state that we would have that kind of an issue. So Department of Child Services, I think, is trying. I had a bill this year that actually is going to require them to do more current updating because the information that the legislature has to work off of is a couple years behind. And you go, why would that be in the days of computerization? There's something wrong. It shouldn't be that. So my bill did pass. So now, by December 31st of this year, we should have the exact data or outcomes from the past calendar year, 2018. So that will be more current. And the other thing that I wanted to know as a legislator is, where are these kids dying? Are they dying in a foster home? Are they dying in their biological home? That maybe they were in the foster system but returned to their biological parent maybe too quickly, and maybe all the problems in that home weren't resolved yet. So anyway, I'm hoping that after we have a little bit of data, that data will actually help our Department of Child Services be more efficient. But anyway, I think the big thing is you can see that pie gets consumed pretty quickly. I know everybody has been concerned about teacher pay. It's been in the news a lot. One of the things that I want to say about that is that teacher pay is really determined locally, for the most part, by your school board, okay? So if you think in your respective school communities that the teachers aren't making enough money, you probably should start participating or being active in your local school board. We did allocate an additional $75 million for teacher appreciation grants, and a third of that is going to go to new teachers that have 5 years of experience or less, okay? So I think the big thing, and you're going to hear over and over, well, the schools just don't get enough money. But if you are in our shoes and you hear from everybody else, they go, well, they're getting 50% of the budget, right? So the other handout that I have here that I want to show to you, because we keep hearing that maybe too much money is going to charter schools or voucher schools, etc. This gives you a breakdown, and it shows you that 93 cents or 93% goes to traditional public schools, and 4.5 cents goes to charter schools. But I actually realized after they printed this for me that they should have public charter schools, because charter schools are public. Now, in my 7-county district, I only have one charter school, and that happens to be Mays over in northern Rush County, okay? So they would be one of the schools that would be getting a little piece of that. And then there's the Choice Scholarship vouchers. They get 2.5%. And that has to do with kids that are in private schools, but their families have to be of a certain income or less before they're eligible. So that gives you kind of an idea on that education funding, which seems like it's really important to a lot of folks. Another thing I want to just touch on real quickly is, for those of you that may not live in the city of Connersville, but you live out in the county, you may be really deprived of rural broadband, like I am, because I live in rural Franklin County, right? And so this year, the governor figured out a way to increase the tolling on the toll road north across the state. Now, that didn't necessarily make all the truckers and people that use that toll road happy, okay? But $100 million of that increase in toll money is going to be dedicated toward rural broadband. And so many of our companies now that provide broadband service are in the process of applying for some of that grant money. And the legislature has passed language that says that it has to go to unserved areas, okay? And I hope they really, really enforce that, because we don't want this government grant money building over current companies that are providing service, and in a sense, offering competition to companies with government money. I mean, that does not seem fair. But the reality is that those of us that really live in what I call the boonies, why we don't have broadband, is that financially it would be a serious loss for the telecom companies. So I'm hoping that we see some benefit for that. Quickly, I want to mention about workforce. This governor has really put a focus on workforce development. And the one thing that I want to say to all of you, if you know of a kiddo in this community that didn't plan on going to college, but they really don't know where they're headed next, okay? And part of the reason is because they don't have financial support from home, and they don't want to stick their neck out and borrow tons of money, okay? There is something now that the state has in place, and anybody that's 18 can apply for it. It's called a Workforce Ready Grant, okay? The Workforce Ready Grant, there's like 5 different categories, and I don't have them all in my head, and I don't have it in front of me, but it's everything from different construction things to manufacturing to health, different professions, and they can actually get a totally free education, and it's not income-based, okay? I know it sounds too good to be true, but it's part of trying to prepare people for the workforce. And you can be older than 18 as well. So if you have somebody in your family or the friend that you know of that's 21 and still hasn't found themselves, this might be the thing that they want to do. And it's my understanding how it's really going to work is that the money for it, if the person doesn't have substantial income coming in, they will probably be eligible for like a Pell Grant and some grants. But then the difference between that and the actual tuition to go to Ivy Tech or Vincennes, or the 2 schools that are currently being talked about, the difference the state will make up. So it's a wonderful opportunity for that kiddo that has said, well, you know, I would have liked to have, but I couldn't because, you know, perfect opportunity for them. The drug epidemic, I don't have to tell you a lot about it, you guys know. But, and Cindy always seems to have the most up-to-date information on that because she's on a couple committees that deal with that issue. But in the budget, there was $50 million for Recovery Works program and $10 million for substance abuse prevention. And then one other thing I think that has had a lot of attention in the news is the whole issue of CBD oil. Well, you know, some of you will remember, I was opposed to CBD oil when the federal government said it was against the federal law. Well, in the USDA Farm Bill that was signed in December of 18, they have now said that CBD oil produced from hemp is legal. So we have passed legislation now that pretty well you'll be able to buy it. Now, from my old nursing background, I would just tell you that there's not the medical support or criteria for its benefits, its uses, dosages. I mean, but we live in a free society. So you're kind of at your own risk, but some people tell me it's been a godsend for them. So I think that the reality is it's going to be available. Now, but the state actually had to put some money in the budget so that the Indiana State Police are going to be able to test the THC content. That's the high part of marijuana, okay? The CBD oil is extracted from hemp. Hemp and marijuana are from the same plant family, the sativa plant. Anyway, but the marijuana stuff has a high THC content. The hemp has to be a low THC content of under 0.03%. Anyway, but it's very difficult to test, and we don't have equipment in place, so Indiana has not legalized medical marijuana or marijuana, and I can't see that happening in the near term, at least with the current makeup of the Senate. I can't really speak for the House. But anyway, that gives you kind of an idea. I always like to throw out a brochure that tells you how a bill becomes a law. The last 2 weeks of session, we were in conference committees, which are where if a bill starts out in the Senate, flies through the Senate, it gets to the House decides they're going to make it better or change it, and then the original Senate author says, that's not what I wanted it to say. So then you file a motion to dissent, and it goes to a conference committee, and 2 senators, 1 from each party, and 2 representatives, 1 from each party, have to duke out the differences. A lot of bills die at that point. This year, actually, out of the 636 bills that were filed in the Senate, only 130 of them actually passed, okay? So that gives you an idea. And out of the 708 bills that were filed in the House, 163 passed. So the House, unfortunately, killed a few more of our Senate bills than they probably should have, but you know, it happens, right? That's a little part of the bickering of the 2 sides of the building. I felt good about several bills. I'm not going to go into all that, but these are some of the ones that I had worked on. Some of you have talked to me about the difficulties of your kids getting their teacher licenses after they graduate from our colleges of education. Thanks to, actually, the House Bill 1002 putting my language from my Senate bill that dealt with switching us from a customized Indiana test that we've been using for 5 years and nobody can pass it. I mean, the pass rates were so bad that, like, some folks were, like, first-time test takers, certain areas were getting like 12% pass rate. I mean, ridiculous. So anyway, we're going to switch back to a national test. I think it's going to be a lot better. There'll be a lot more preparation materials for those students as they prepare to take it as well, because it is a national test. And I think it'll also help when, you know, we live in a mobile society. So somebody's husband, after they're married, changes positions, they come here, go there, whatever. I think that'll be a good thing. I mentioned earlier about the Department of Child Services. One of the things that I've really worked a lot about, and then I promise to shut up, and that is I really think that the infant mortality issue in our state it's really serious. We are losing, last year we lost about 600 newborn babies, okay? And we don't really know why. We're the 7th worst in the nation for infant death, and our moms that are dying of childbirth, it's actually twice the national rate, okay? So since I'm an old nurse and I'm a mom and I'm a grandma, I worry about that kind of stuff. So last year I passed something called the Maternal Mortality Bill that now sets up a commission that's managed by the Department of Health, that every mom that dies in our state, they're going to be able to investigate and figure out why. It gives limited liability to the hospital and the physicians, so they can hopefully provide us all the facts. This year, I've got the infant mortality bill passed, and that will actually be done regionally because of the number of deaths of the infants, so that then they'll be able to report back to a new position at the Department of Health called the Infant Fetal Mortality Review Coordinator. So those are just some of the things. I know that you all probably have lots of things you want to talk about, so I'm going to be quiet and let these other guys have a chance. And thank you so much for inviting us. Thanks for taking time out of your day.
Well, it's a pleasure to be here. As Gertrude mentioned, I serve up and down the Ohio line, but I have one township, which is Waterloo in this county. One of the best things, I guess, that I also get to do is I serve on the Eastern Indiana Regional Planning Commission, which includes Fayette and Rush counties, and so I'm involved in your county in several different ways, and as well, excuse me, there are only we could probably count on 2 hands how many pieces of legislation are district specific that go across the General Assembly, so whatever we do affects everybody in the state. There's a joke over there, and I'm sure these two will agree with me. Lake County seems to get a great deal of individual legislation because they're very unique up in the northwest corner. They even have a line on each of our tax forms in the state of Indiana. So that's kind of a joke around the State House. If it's going to be specific, it's going to be Lake County. So, but at any rate, I spend the vast majority of my time on education, and as you all know, teacher wages is certainly dead center and should be for the most part. I want to share with you just a couple things of how we address that. I'm not certain that it's gotten out to the field all that easily because it's a hard campaign to market, if you will, but the governor early on had a group of businessmen look at the issue, and he came up in the State of the State address and came up with a proposition that the state would prepay the pension fund for teachers, which every school district has to, on a weekly basis, put in 7.5% of the salary of the staff to the pension fund. And so what we figured out was if we would pay, actually what it come out to is about $140 million, $70 million each year for the next 2 years. And that would free up dollars locally that would go directly to teacher pay, which equals about 2%. So the brilliant piece of it is that from a financial perspective, it's not just tax dollars going in one time and that's it. This money actuarially will continue to grow and be a blessing to every school district perpetually unless there's a catastrophic economic event in the United States. It wouldn't just be Indiana. And so it was brilliant from a investment perspective as well for the local school districts. And so that actually is part of legislation. Gene mentioned we actually put in $763 million over the biennium, more so than what we have in the past. So whatever the budget was, we added $763 million. Of that, $140 million was the pay down of the teacher pension. Now, it's still, I'm not certain everybody understands that. As Gene mentioned, school boards have the capacity to work on raises for the teachers. The General Assembly has never been in the business of saying you have to do this or that. Now, you could look at maybe the state police pension fund, and they have a scale of where they're paid, and that's the way it is. It's set in, maybe it's by tenure or by position or both, but the General Assembly has never gotten into paying teacher pay. It's all local. So we still have a responsibility. I'm not negating that we allocate money to the school districts, and how we do it is based on the number of students in every school district. And so just to give you a quick overview, not only did we pay that 2%, but in Fayette County, actually, we project that you're going to lose about 78 students this next year. So the 2019-2020 school year, you lose 78 students. So we attach a baseline dollar amount to each student and that's how every school district's paid. This actual, in 2019-2020, we actually added about $110,000 to the base in Fayette County. Even though you're going to lose 78 students, we added more to it. So is it adequate? I can't answer that question. It's a local question, but I can tell you that we as the state looked at it from a holistic perspective. Could we have done better? I suppose we could have, but there are a lot of mouths to feed at the State House when we start talking about the budget, as Gene had mentioned. In the Department of Children's Services, we're about I can't remember the exact number, but 260-some million, in the first year, and it's over $500 million over their annual budget because of some of the issues, as we mentioned, the students or children that are having difficulties in the foster care system. We just have some issues that we're trying to deal with from a perspective where we still make sure the kids are okay, but there's some procedural issues. Maybe we're taking kids out of the family too quickly. Those are the type of things that are up to the people that are into it, up to their necks, trying to figure out how to do it best and still protect the kids so we don't end up with a statistic of students, or I always think about school, of children who are in the system but end up hurt for whatever reason. And so So I think we've done a decent job. Could we have done more? Could we have moved money around and done different things? The answer is probably yes. But I think we put our best foot forward and tried to do our very best to make sure that teachers get additional pay. It's still up to the superintendent and the school board whether or not the 2% that we prepaid for the pension ends up in the teachers' pockets. It's not up to the state. We didn't dictate it. So that's a message I'd like to leave with all of you. That's the flat out truth. Now we can argue about how much should have gone or should go, but we did some good things. And so now the school districts may be in a difficult financial position, maybe not be able to pass it along. That's a local situation. And so I can see a conversation going over here, and we can talk about it. But that's how we did it, and that was our viewpoint. I've sat down with a great deal of superintendents across the state, and some were concerned about adding it to base pay, which is a very valid concern. But the people from the pension organization PERF and the Office of Management and Budget convinced me that we were in pretty good shape. The pension fund is paid over 100%. And so at any rate, we tried to do our best, all I can say. As well, Senator Leising mentioned about the teacher prep exam. So last year, we ran across a situation where that was when it first came out to us that some teachers were having difficulty passing the exam. So this year, Gene was able to get a bill across the bow that changes to a national exam. We don't certainly want to change the rigor for teachers because we want them to be up to snuff and have the proper education so our kids get the best. But looking at it overall, it became a problem, and so we changed some of those things. We did a couple of additional things. I had a bill that I authored that went across the finish line that helped us give beginning teachers an automatic pay raise based on the school. There are a few things in code that would prevent that. So we changed a couple things and automatically would give school districts the ability to move up beginning teachers and there's some reasons why, and we won't get into all of it, but move teachers up so that the beginning teachers can get some additional salaries. And so I think holistically we looked at it from many different facets to try and help so that school districts have enough money and teachers have enough pay that they can do what it is they do their best, right, and not have to live on paupers' wages. And so we're moving in the right direction is what I can say. Did we hit a hole in one? I'd say no, but I know that we're working in the right direction. So I don't even know if those numbers are out yet, but I have the sheet here, and that's so I just shared numbers that are out there. Overall, I think we've spent a great deal of money as well in the workforce. I know there's a representative from Dot Foods here talking about, and Ivy Tech talking about truck drivers, and are we doing enough with workforce ready grants, helping people get credentialed up so they can participate in the workforce? And so we spent at least $30 million on workforce this session that went into the budget to try and help that grow as well. And so we don't want to negate the responsibility on the employer's behalf either. And so I think we have a pretty decent way of mixing it to make sure that everybody has skin in the game. And of course, Ivy Tech and Vincennes and some of the other schools are doing a great job in partnering with K through 12 to make sure credentials are earned in their high school career. So if they're not going off to college, they have credentialing to help them transition right into the workforce. And we worked a great deal on that this session as well with the governor's office, trying to make sure that in the K through 12 space, we're giving students the opportunity to participate in the workforce. So their transition from K through 12 goes right into the workforce, or if you need skilled up, there's money for that as well. So I'm certain we haven't done the best job in everybody's eyes, but I can assure you that we really tried our best to make sure that the state's moving forward and address the needs that we have. And we still got a long ways to go. There'll always be problems, but our desire, at least I can speak for us in the Senate, I can't speak for the House, but I think they feel the same way, that we tried our very best to make sure that everybody gets their piece of the puzzle so that we can continue to make or help the state move forward. And so with that, I'll leave with Cindy. As Gene said, I know you all have some good questions, and so we'll give you an opportunity for that. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, thanks for everyone being here. I always love it when Gene and Jeff go first because Gene provides all of the step-by-step information, and Gene and I work very closely up at the State House. I sent her some legislation, and she sponsored one of my bills over there. I sponsored hers over at the House, and it's really a great collaborative working relationship that we have. We had a really good session, a really exhausting session. I'm still kind of tired. We finished, as Gene said, last Wednesday at about 11 o'clock. New to me this year is I'm on the House Ways and Means Committee. It's very difficult to get on that committee because it's the Budget Committee. It probably added 100 hours to my session, to my workload this session. We sit there in Ways and Means, if you're not familiar, and I wasn't exactly, we interviewed every state agencies for their budget requests, and in millions we're talking. For instance, one thing we did was, as President Daniels, Rich Daniels, came from Purdue, we allocated funding for them to build a new veterinary school, veterinary hospital. They are the only veterinary school in Indiana. Plus is the great job that President Daniels is doing, freezing tuition. It wasn't too hard of a decision to make. So again, remember, every state agency, every state university interviews and requests funding in front of the Ways and Means Committee, as they do with the Senate Appropriations Committee. So the first budget comes out through Ways and Means, through the House, or the House budget is produced, and then of course the governor has a budget, as does the Senate. They worked beautifully together for us to be able to quit early this year. And the Senate had all new leadership, so they really did come together pretty quickly. They had new president pro tem, and all of their financial leadership was new. And I was really pleased with how it all came together. And it is working and compromising and negotiating. And we had a big gaming bill this year, which not everybody wants, but needless to say, we're a gaming state. And we decided to be that a long time ago when the casinos opened in Gary and Southern Indiana and everywhere else. We've allowed it to, if the city of Terre Haute on a referendum, if they decide to have a casino, we are allowing them to have a casino. Statistics from Terre Haute are really awful as far as child abuse and neglect, unemployment, drug use. The city of Terre Haute has been asking for this as a financial driver. So we've allowed that in the gaming bill for them to open a casino. We're allowing Gary, Indiana to move their casino inland. When you are looking at areas that struggle so much financially, as I know you guys do, and I've worked so hard for all of you, because every time I look at this amazing building and so much of the great infrastructure here, and I keep thinking, Connersville's coming back, it's coming back. But so much of our efforts have to be for those areas of the state that are in need. Again, with the Gary Casino, the city of Gary has been in horrible straits for years. I mean, with the steel industry, losing that up in Gary. So a lot of the work that we do is for those areas of the state in need. So much of my emphasis and what I do are for families in need. The drug addiction, family and children. We had Director Stignan come and speak to the Republican House caucus and explain exactly what she's doing with DCS to improve it. And it is so hard. So much of the calls I get are people who come to my restaurant and everybody talks to me. It's DCS issues. And it's heartbreaking to me that we've got so many kids that are being abused and neglected and dying in our state So my emphasis has always been, we got to surround them, we got to give them all the help that we need, and somehow straighten these folks out so that their kids have a shot at life. The other thing I will continue to work on, and I'm adamant about, and unfortunately things move slowly in government, is the public health of Hoosiers is horrible. We're one of the worst in the country between smoking and obesity and mental health, everything else. We're really pretty lousy. And I'd like to see more funding go toward that. We also do not fund our public health very well in Indiana. So I really want to see a major push. I had a bill this year that passed that was very important to free up many more mental health and addiction specialists. And it allows other surrounding states do not have a mandate that the treatment plans have to be signed off by a physician or a clinical psychologist, but Indiana had that mandate. My bill is now going to state that they can sign up, and this is for Medicaid only. Those professionals with a master's degree can sign up on their own treatment plan and bill for it. And that will allow us to be much better at being able to hire those professionals in Indiana, which we have such a shortage of. So as far as school funding, I've pushed for it. I also say, whenever I have somebody come to me and say, but you aren't, again, I worked on the budget. And if they say, but you're not giving schools enough, or you're not paying teachers enough, I said, then you go to your school board meeting and you ask them, and you ask your superintendent, where's all this money going? Again, we don't decide. And the governor's ingenious plan, I think, to free up that $70 million, of course he's saying that should go to teacher pay. We can't make them, but by golly, the people in the community should go to the school board meetings and say, hey, this money came through from the governor. This came through the General Assembly. Are the teachers getting it? You have to hold your people responsible. So I will leave it at that and let y'all ask questions.
Thank you, Representative Zemke. We have about 15 minutes until we'll officially adjourn. The legislators are going to stay afterwards for a few minutes if you want some one-on-one opportunity to speak with them. But we want to make sure that those who need to get back to their jobs and other responsibilities can do so at 1 o'clock. We're going to just ask that as an audience, if you could just raise your hand, stand and seat in your place, and just loudly speak the question since we don't have a microphone for the audience. And we'll then let our senators and our representative decide who can answer the question as far as their area of committee. So do we have any questions? Who wants to start off with this? Ms. Kendall.
I just had a question about our local hospital. I mean, it's up in the air, but what about the drug recovery money that was spent for the Recovery Star?
A North Star.
So who has watched where that money has gone and what's going to happen? I mean, that was our tax dollars being spent for that.
She knows.
Sorry, blew that one. Actually, I did contact the Attorney General's office about that. And, I don't know what they have done with it, right? I mean, I circled back with them. They told me they were, looking into it. I think, the governor's office is also well aware. I've met with somebody by the name of Paul Keeper who's involved in that kind of stuff. And, it's certainly been on my mind because I was here for that ribbon cutting and grand opening and all of that. And that was a lot of money. So I hope, the other thing that I will just say on that is that I was really, through the entire session, trying to stay connected with folks on trying to keep your hospital open, okay? And, including meeting with Michael Dora, who is the U.S. Department of Agricultural Rural Director, connecting him with our head of Senate Appropriations, Senator Mishner, meeting with fellow by the name of Tim Kennedy, who is really knowledgeable in hospital law in Indiana, and he in turn has met with some of your county officials, and we actually had draft language that if the county would have felt that they could have somehow intervened, that I had language ready to go into the budget bill that Senator Mishler was ready to approve and put in. However, in the last days of the session, the county really notified Mr. Kennedy, the attorney, that it just wasn't going to work. And I'm just going to tell you, I mean, I can't speak for the county, but I'm assuming it's the large indebtedness of the hospital. It's my understanding that they're down 15 to 16 million with the New York Bank, okay? And so I'm just hopeful that if they got any bids through the bankruptcy process, that something's going to work out. I wish I could give you a better update than that, but you know, I think that I just wish that something had been done years ago. I think it went too long, too far. And I can't point fingers because, you know, I'm not on that board. I'm not, you know, the CEO. I don't know. But it's a big concern. And I would just tell you again, going back to my discussion about moms and babies, okay? Your hospital here no longer has OB, okay? But I've talked to other hospitals in my district, because there are 6 of them that serve my district, and they tell me that OB services are very expensive services, okay? Because I guess that, you know, babies come anytime, right? So people have to be on call and available. But, you know, when I look at just my 7 counties in my district, 3 of those counties you cannot currently have a baby in, okay? So I worry a lot about the prenatal care, what the moms that are pregnant are not getting. Because if they have to drive, let's say 45 minutes or an hour to get to a doctor who is willing to take them on as a patient, then they have their time at the doctor's office, and then they have to drive back. Let's pretend one of you are their employer. Well, you know, most doctors don't have extremely convenient hours. So are you going to let this young gal a half a day off every month so she can get her prenatal visit? See, you know, it's just not a good thing. So I'm really, really hopeful. And if there's anybody here that knows more about this, I would encourage them to speak up while we're all here, because I think we're all anxious to know if there's anything that can be shared in regard to the hospital. And I know that Senator Rotz and Representative Zemke feel the same way. I mean, you need your hospital here. You need it, not just for OB/GYN, but you need it for all kinds of services, for emergency services. And very frankly, you know, even if it's a situation where they can't cure whatever it is that ails you, at least you can be the starting point so they can transfer you safely to somewhere that can help you. So anyway, sorry, I wish I had better news than that. I was hoping, 2 weeks ago, I thought maybe I'd be coming here telling you that there's language in the budget bill that county maybe can take it over, blah, blah, blah. But that's not the end of the story right now. So thank you. Some other questions?
You had mentioned, Senator, regarding the $100 million dedicated to the rural broadband. How will that be? Is there a process that we in Fayette County need to be aware of in terms of how do we get a piece of that for our rural parts of this county?
Well, you know, I see Terry Joe from Rush Shelby here, so I'm going to have to put him on the spot because he probably knows more of the details than I do. But there is a grant application process, but I believe that has to be submitted by a company, a provider that can provide the broadband service. So the county or the chamber, you guys can't apply for that, right? Or the mayor. It's not like, you know, some other grants. And I know for sure in my district that I have been asked to do letters of support for enhanced telecommunications, which provides service in the Batesville, Greensburg, Brookville, you know, Oldenburg, that area. I've also been asked to do a letter of support for the grant process for a combination 9-star Henry County RAMC. And I'm not sure who would actually be the recipient of the grant, but NineStar is the one that's currently in the broadband business. And they're a telecom company. So, Terry, do you have any other thoughts on,
I think what you need to make sure you understand too is it's money that's to be matched. So you get awarded $10 million or $20 million, as Fayette County partnered with, I say NineStar or any of those that you mentioned, you also have to have some skin in the game too. So there's some commitment from the community to that position also. $100 million is a lot of money. $100 million is a drop in the bucket compared to all the communities in Indiana that are vying for the same thing that Fayette County is vying for. Same thing in Rush County, Shelby County, every little burg is applying for this money, and it's not going to go real far. The intention is if that money is spent, then the government may be able to provide more money after that. So that's very important.
So I want to share quickly that we really fought for the rural aspect of it as well. So I believe the latest comment I had out of the budget folks was 75% of it was going to go to rural Indiana, which was important for us in rural communities where it is as sparse as it is. And if I'm not mistaken, I believe there was we'll call him or her a czar in the lieutenant governor's office, I think, or the governor's office, I can't remember, that was going to be in charge of it. Does that sound correct?
well, actually, it's a little, nothing's ever simple in government. The lieutenant governor has a person who is now the broadband coordinator or director. So, and he was originally from Brown County, and I think he certainly understands the lack of broadband in many of our areas that are totally unserved. But because this money is coming from the toll road number I mentioned, then the Indiana Finance Authority is involved in accepting this money, and it really comes by way of NDOT. So there are several entities involved, but the Office of Community and Rural Affairs, which is key in the legislation that I believe that we passed on one of the last nights, I think they will have a big part in the say. But I'm on the Utilities Committee, and I tried to get the big guys to say, but who's going to have the final stamp of approval on these applications? And they wouldn't tell me, Terry. That always makes me a little nervous, because I don't know. So out of all those players, who's going to really be the big cheese, right? But I think the language that we pass legislatively is going to make it focus on unserved areas. So, Mayor, you probably don't have to worry about that money coming into the city of Connersville and overbuilding what might already be working well in your city.
Well, we do have a committee working on that right now. Terry is part of it, and so we are working towards it. So we're asking for money also.
Yeah, but I think that, the unserved areas is where this $100 million is going to be focused on.
We have time for maybe one more question from our audience. For any one of our officials today, I didn't hear a lot about business tax credits on the state level. What's been done to provide some relief for our businesses? Anything that you can share with us?
Honestly, Jeff, you had the redevelopment commission bill, and I stuck it on here, right? The one that has to do, if you want to talk a little bit about that. But truthfully, we've been lowering the corporate income tax gradually down. And I don't know if we've got that completely down yet or not, but it's phasing down. And some people that aren't in business would say, oh, why would you do that? Well, that stimulates jobs and economic development. But as far as other incentives, there's training money under this workforce plan. So like, for instance, I'll give you an example in my home area. Hillenbrand Industries and Batesville Tool and Die and Hartwood Industries have developed a program totally separate from the state that they've had in place now probably 3 years. And they are working with the public high school to, it's like a work study program for like those kids that are juniors or seniors and they know they want to go into manufacturing. And so that is going very, very well. And so now in the workforce bill, I believe there's going to be some money that those companies that are doing that kind of thing can apply to help offset some of the cost of their training. Because it's like training kind of on the job. But maybe Senator Rotz has some other thoughts in regard to that.
So, and Virgin Zemke would probably know this as well, I'd say that tax credits at the state level are not really looked upon very favorably. But we have done a lot of grants, and so when it comes to workforce development, a great deal of money in grants, at least $30 million over the next biennium. And so one of the things that the Eastern Indiana Regional Planning Commission asked for was a residential TIF. Now that may scare some folks, but we were able to get a bill across the bow. I authored and carried it, and one of the things in this bill for the school districts, they have to have a resolution from the school board that approves this residential TIF. And so we looked at it as workforce housing and actually how it would roll out. Let's say there's a 20-acre section of ag land that's currently being taxed as ag. If there were a need for workforce housing, hopefully in an ideal situation, families would move in. The infrastructure for the road, the sidewalks, and sewer, water, and that would be paid for through the TIF. And the benefit to the local school district, of course, the economy overall would be benefit from with people coming in, but the benefit to the school district may not be the property taxes in addition to what they were normally getting under the ag rate, but it would be the number of students attending the school district. And so we fought through that thing. That there was some pushback on the school districts having to pass a resolution that would say they were in favor of a residential TIF. And so that is one of the things that we did, and that was actually a result of right here in Fayette County and Rush, and the 5 counties that are part of the Planning Commission that asked, and the General Assembly thought it was a good idea, and we got it across the bow. So again, the tax credit issue, if you will, it's a lot of grants, tax credits are a little different story.
All right, Senators, thank you. And let's give a round of applause for our legislators that spoke today.